Oh, hey everyone. I didn't realize you were here. I was just scrolling through some of the most played decks in Modern, trying to figure out how many of them can remove a 4 mana enchantment. So let's see, this looks like Affinity here. Affinity, nothing in the main deck. And in the sideboard, no way to kill a 4 mana enchantment. How about Blue-Red Twin? Blue-Red Twin, well, I guess they have a couple cryptics in the main deck, which can technically bounce an enchantment for a turn. Sideboard, no, nothing. So, I mean, I guess just the 2 cryptics, sort of. Living End, surprisingly near the top of the meta. Well, I guess Beast Within can do it. So that's 3 main deck Beast Withins. Sideboard, no, nothing. Bloom Titan. How about Bloom Titan? Main deck, don't see anything. Sideboard, got a Nature's Claim and 3 Seal of Primordium. So four cards post board that can deal with a 4 mana enchantment. Naya Burn, main deck, nothing. Sideboard, get Destructive Revelry. So that's another 4 outs in the sideboard to a 4 mana enchantment. Jund has 2 Maelstrom Pulse in the main, a couple mass removal spells in the board, but nothing to deal with enchantment, so 2, I guess. Blue, white, red control. This deck doesn't even play Cryptic anymore? What's wrong with these control players? So nothing in the main deck, can't even bounce it in the main deck. And I guess we have 2 Wear Tears in the sideboard, so 2 outs post board. Let's see. This is Scape Shift. Scape Shift does have cryptics, so 3 cryptics and a couple Nature's Claim post board, so a couple outs. Grixis Twin. Grixis Twin, no cryptics again, nothing in the main sideboard. Nothing. No way to deal with a 4 mana enchantment. And this is, Green White Collected Company. So we got a couple Quasali Pride Mage, single Dramoka's Command, and that's it. So 2.5 maybe. So why am I looking through Modern trying to figure out what can be a 4 mana enchantment? That's because this week on Budget Magic we are playing a deck called Troll Worship, which is built around a super powerful 4 mana enchantment that pretty much, as we just saw, when we get our combo off, we put most of the decks in Modern. I left 2 off the list. Tron, admittedly rough matchup, and in fact, admittedly a rough matchup, but otherwise, those are, we looked at 10 of the 12 most popular decks in Modern, and once we resolve our combo, we are literally putting them on 0 to 2 outs in game 1, and somewhere between 0 and 4 or 5 outs in game 2. So Troll Worship, $63 online, $85 in paper. I absolutely killed it with this deck this week. I played 2 Modern Leagues and went 4-1 in each of them with our Budget Magic deck. Anyway, the deck. So Troll and Worship. Let's start by talking about Worship. Worship is this 4 mana enchantment. It is 3 and a white. If you control a creature, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. So basically, as long as Worship is on the board and you have a creature, you can't die. There are some fringe things that get around it. For example, Bump in the Night. Not that anyone plays Bump in the Night, but things that cause life loss instead of deal damage can get around Worship. Also, Infect. That's why Infect's a bad matchup. Infect, oddly, why it does is damage. It does not reduce our life total. It gives us poison counters. So Worship doesn't do much against infect creatures or anything. So, but otherwise, this is basically a hard lock that says you can't lose the game for 4 mana. So part 1 of this deck is to resolve a Worship. And then the rest of our deck is built around trolls. If you're not familiar, the original hexproof used to be called Troll Shroud. There was actually a big uprising when they named it hexproof because everyone wanted it to be called, or a lot of people wanted it to be called Troll Shroud because of Troll Ascetic. This was an ability they gave to trolls, and it said the creature can't be targeted by spells or abilities your opponents control. Troll Aesthetic is 1 and 2 green. You get a 3 true with Hexproof or Troll Shroud. and you can regenerate for 1 and a green. So it's really hard to get rid of Troll Aesthetic. Not only can it not be targeted because it has hexproof by our opponents, it also regenerates, so something like a Pyroclasm or an Anger of the Gods or even a Supreme Verdict doesn't get rid of it. So we are attempting to resolve a worship and then resolve some number of trolls or creatures with hexproof, which basically hardlocks a huge portion of the modern metagame. So let's look over the creatures. We have a few non-trolls which help us get to our trolls and to our worships. Single Bird of Paradise and 4 Land and War Elves. These are our turn 1 plays that help us play a troll on turn 2 and then a worship on turn 3. That's the nut draw. I've literally had games against like mono red where you go turn 1 elf, turn 2 some sort of troll, turn 3 worship, and your opponent scoops because they have no outs. We also have 4 Sylvan Caryatids. So this one also helps us ramp, not quite as efficiently as the turn 1 plays, but it has hexproof, and having 3 toughness is actually pretty sweet. It means Pyroclasm doesn't take it down, and for some reason right now in Modern, Pyroclasm is seeing a lot more play than Anger of the Gods, which could kill Caryatid. It's a good creature to sit on the battlefield for the worship lock when we don't have a troll. Then we have 2 copies of Eternal Witness. This is basically a value card. If somehow we do get caught by a Pyroclasm killing our troll, we can get it back. If somehow our opponent does draw into one of their 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 outs to worship, we can use Eternal Witness to get our worship back. It also creates a sweet loop with Sun Titan, which is our finisher. So in the late game, we can block with Eternal Witness, cast Sun Titan, get back Eternal Witness, get back Dismember or Harmonize or something else. Then we get to our list of trolls. We have 4 Troll Aesthetic, the original troll. We have 4 Witch Stalkers, which is basically Troll 2.0. It can't regenerate, but its ability where whenever your opponent casts a blue or black spell during your turn, you get a +1/+1 counter, is actually pretty relevant against decks with counter spells, against decks like Twin. Then 1 Big Mama Sigarda, 5/5 flying hexproof, and this is the sweetest lock. I wish I got this game on camera, but we oh, played a game. We got Worship resolved, got Sigarda resolved. Our opponent played and repeatedly attacked with an Emrakul, which did nothing. Sigarda doesn't allow us to sacrifice permanents to our opponent's effects, so the Annihilator on Emrakul did nothing, and Worship didn't let us lose life, so our opponent was just repeatedly attacking with the Emrakul, and it didn't matter. Like, we even had Emrakul locked out of the game with this combo. And then, as I mentioned, 3 copies of Sun Titan. The value play gets back any of our trolls, gets back Eternal Witness, which in turn can get back a worship. So that's the idea of the deck. We play Mana Dorks on turns 1 and turns 2. On turn 2 or 3, depending on the Mana Dork situation, we are looking to get down a Troll, Troll Aesthetic, Witch Stalker, a little bit later, Sigarda. And then on turn 3 or 4, we're looking to resolve a worship, which, as we saw, zooming through the modern meta, beats a lot of decks. In the decks that it doesn't beat, we put them to like 2 outs, and that means if we can get multiple worships, even those decks are drawing dead. And most of the time, if you're on a 2-outer from your sideboard, or even in your main deck, the odds of you drawing that card isn't that high. So this deck is just really good in our current modern format. As I mentioned, Tron is rough because Karn can exile worship and we can't even get it back. We do have 4 copies of Ghost Quarter, which gives us a fighting chance against Tron. If we can fire off a couple Ghost Quarters, use our Mana Dorks to get to Sun Titan to keep getting back Ghost Quarters, we do have a small chance against Tron. It's not just unwinnable. Infect, on the other hand, is close to unwinnable. That's our one really, really bad matchup out of the big decks in Modern. The rest of the deck, 4 copies of O-Ring. O-Ring's a little weird, but it's actually a solid budget removal spell. And as we saw going through the list of Modern decks, Dromoka's Command, not heavily played, but it does pop up now and then. Oblivion Ring gives us another enchantment to sacrifice in place of our worship. 4 Dismembers. Obviously, we are a green-white deck, would like this to be Path to Exile, but for budget purposes, Dismember works just fine, and it's actually sweet in this deck because we can kind of, if we know we're going to lock in the worship combo, we can kind of dismember away our life total without worrying about it too much. because we can go all the way down to 1 life. As long as we have Worship, it doesn't matter. And the last card, 2 copies of Harmonize. It's a way to dig through our deck in the late game. We can get it back with Eternal Witness, draw some more cards, and eventually we win the game with some combination of Sun Titan, Sigarda, even our Trolls to some extent, although they can get shut out by ground creatures, and 2 copies of Gavany Township. This is our other finisher. So we can play this and make all of our birds and elves and hexproof creatures that are really difficult to kill huge over the course of a few turns. So eventually we're attacking with an 8/7 troll, and there's not many creatures that can deal with that. The rest of the mana base, 7 forests, 4 plains, 4 ghost quarters, the shout out to Tron and Bloom Titan. Also, another path to victory is using Sun Titan to get back ghost quarters, and we can lock our opponent through the strip mine lock thing, which we saw in the mono white Amiria deck a few weeks ago. So we do a similar thing here where we just keep ghost quartering until our opponent's out of basics, and then ghost quarter turns into strip mine. And then we have 6 man lands. We have 4 Stirring Wildwoods and 2 Treetop Village. Amazingly enough, Stirring Wildwoods is significantly cheaper than Treetop Village. Who knew? But the reason we want these man lands, not only are they valuable in our deck, they're a way we can get in some damage, but these turn into creatures, so in the absolute pinch, say we just happen to not draw any of our trolls, and we are worried about dying, we can activate these during our opponent's turn, so we have a creature on the battlefield, because that's the sweet thing about Worship. Worship isn't like Platinum Angel. Worship, as long as we have a creature when the damage is dealt, so during our opponent's combat phase, then we go to 1 life instead of the damage. So as long as we have a creature during that specific time, it really doesn't matter. It's not like Platinum Angel where we go to -10 life, they remove the angel, and we lose on the spot because we're at negative life. We only go to 1 as long as we have a creature. So we can use these as a way to protect ourselves in combination with Worship. The Sideboard. Sideboard deals with some problems. We have 3 Tormod scripts to take care of graveyard decks. Another matchup that can be challenging is the Grizzle brand deck, where they are putting a Grizzlebrand or Emrakul on play on turn 2. That deck, turn 2 combos, we can beat combo decks, that's not a problem. But if they can combo off on turn 2, then we have a problem, because we cannot lock in our combo fast enough. So that is our protection against those strategies. Burrington Forge Tender. This helps us against things like the Ad Nauseam deck with the Angel's Grace combo. This card is just very powerful in that situation. It can also come in against red decks to buy us time. Elixir of Immortality. One thing that does happen on occasion with this deck, it happened to me against Affinity, is we lock in our combo. They cannot beat our combo, but they also will not scoop, because their plan is that we draw through our entire deck and deck ourselves before they deck themselves. So Elixir of Immortality comes in those type of matchups where we know that our opponent is unlikely to beat the combo, but they are likely to be able to clutter up the board to such an extent that we can't get through the damage. So Elixir of Immortality allows us to shuffle our graveyard back into our library, so our opponent will deck themselves first if that's their plan. Disenchant kills an artifact or enchantment. Pretty simple. Mark of Asylum, this is a sweet one. Mark of Asylum prevents all non-combat damage that is dealt to creatures you control. So one way that people can technically get around this deck, especially if we're not careful and leave up regeneration on troll or something, is a card like Anger of the Gods. You can cast Anger of the Gods, which kills almost all of our creatures, all of our early game creatures. That gets rid of all our creatures. Worship is rendered ineffective and our opponent can burn us out. Well, Mark of Asylum says we will not lose to Anger of the Gods or Pyroclasm. I was questionable about this at first because I wasn't sure. Having so many hexproof creatures, it's not like we're worried about our opponent shooting lightning bolts at our creatures because they all have hexproof. But those Go Wide, Red Sweepers, Bonfire of the Damned, Anger of the Gods, Pyroclasm, those type of cards, Mark of Asylum is a great answer to if we think our opponent is on that plan. And finally, Eidolon of Rhetoric. Eidolon or Rhetoric is a great way to slow down big turn combo decks. So we can bring in Eidolon as a way to prevent our opponent from just those weird, wacky combos. And like everything else, it's designed to help us live long enough to lock things in with Worship and our Trolls. So anyway, that's Troll Worship. Had a ton of success and a ton of fun with this deck. It's just so awesome to play this wacky combo that people are totally not expecting. You play like Land of War Elves, and you're like, alright, whatever. And you play Troll Aesthetic, and they're like, huh? And then you play Worship the next turn, and they're like, oh, and just scoop on the spot. Like, so many decks literally are, you're putting your opponent on a 2-outer in 90%, 80% of the games you play in Modern. They have to have one of 2 or 3 or sometimes 0 very specific answers, or they just cannot win the game. So the combo is really powerful, and it's sort of a metagame choice. If we were in a metagame where Tron was the top deck, we would have a problem. If we were in a metagame where everyone was playing Infect, or everyone was playing 4 copies of Dromoka's Command and Oblivion Ring, stuff that easily gets rid of our Worship, or if everything was control decks where everyone's playing 4 Damnation, 4 Wrath of the Gods that can just swipe away all our creatures, those metagames would be tough for Troll Worship. Thankfully, we're in a metagame where Affinity, Mono Redburn, Naya Burn, those type of decks are the #1 decks, and those decks they have such a hard time beating this deck. We can literally just make them scoop on turn 3. So definitely give it a shot. I think this deck is really well positioned. I had a ton of success with it and a ton of fun with it this week. So give it a try. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Oh, by the way, don't forget to check out mtggoldfish.com. It's where all my articles are, where other great articles and content are posted, supports the videos, runs the YouTube channel. So just head over there, got all the deck lists from the latest SCG Opens and all the other big tournaments. And don't forget, if you enjoy the video content, to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you'll be up to date on all the latest offerings from MTG Goldfish in video form. That said, enjoy the videos, and I will talk to you guys later.